So I'm going to be using a 2/0 V-Loc, which is usually what I use to close the vagina, a 12-inch I believe, and a GS21. When I'm doing my surgeries, oftentimes I will bend the needle to fit it through a 5mm port, but in this case, for the purpose of teaching, I'm going to go ahead and just load the needle. So I'm loading my needle facing left, so then when I go into the body, I can literally just grab it with my right hand, my needle grasper, and have the needle properly loaded. Okay. So now you can see my needle's facing left with my left hand, and I'm going to grab it with my right, so now it's properly loaded. And now I can begin suturing. So again, like you've seen before, this is for a running suture. I'm going to go ahead and load the needle. I'm going to grab again with my left hand, and reload on the tissue. In order to get this loop, so I'm going to get my loop available, I'm going to grab it with my left hand. You can see this loop here. And then I'm going to go ahead and move the camera in. Can you move the camera in? Normally I'd move the camera in, but I am all by myself, so I'm just going to go ahead and load it like this. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab with my left. It's easiest to get into that tiny little hole if you touch your needle to that hole, because then you can kind of feel a little bit. Now I'm reloading on the tissue, and you'll notice here how this is the needle's kind of the shape of a smile. Even if my needle is partially straightened as I normally do it, it's very easy to see that this is going to be loaded just how we want it to enter the tissue. I'm pulling up, and I'm using my left hand to kind of tighten the knot. Now what I've done with my right hand is I'm leaving it up by the trocar because I know it's safe. And then I will tighten this down. Okay? Now I'm ready to go for my next suture. I'm going to go ahead and grab. I would make that knot a little bit tighter, but it's a little bit more difficult with this rubber. And I'm going to go ahead, and you can see now that this is kind of, the needle is shaped in the shape of a rainbow. So you can see right here the needle, and then I will dive in and rotate. That way I'm hitting the tissue at a right angle. The biggest mistake that I see is people are often not hitting the tissue at a right angle. Again, here you can see that the needle now looks like a smile. I call that restoring the smile. And I'm loading my instrument. And I'm ready to go for my next suture. Again, we'll take a look here, but I'm going to grab the vagina, or grab the tissue, pull it towards me, and then look how, in order to actually hit the needle at a right angle, I have to create, I call it the rainbow. If I load it like this, it's much harder to get it to the vaginal tissue because I end up skiving. So again, I'm going to create a rainbow, and I'm driving it through. Oftentimes with the young vaginal tissue, I do need to do it in 2 bites and come through the middle. But for the purposes of teaching, I'm just showing you that I'm going it through both. And then I'm keeping my smile and restoring it and just reloading and running the tissue again. And I'll do one more to kind of show you. Okay. And we're going to go ahead and do one more here. And then typically I will run the suture all the way across the vagina. And if you look at the product label, it says to go back 2 stitches. I often actually go back a whole second layer when I'm sewing the vagina. And that's to ensure a really nice closure and to prevent dehiscence. Because that's basically a 2-layer closure instead of just a 1-layer closure. So I would go here, I can grab with my left hand. See, I'm keep loading right on the tissue so the needle stays stable, restoring the smile as I call it. And then I would go ahead and suture all the way back from here to here. And that's how you run a suture.